This is Thrivenomics, presented by Thrive Mortgage. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Thrivenomics. I am your host, James Duncan. I'm the Director of Marketing and Engagement for Thrive Mortgage. I have a very distinct privilege of leading the best marketing team in the mortgage industry. Welcome to this next episode of Thrivenomics. We have been on a little bit of a hiatus in 2021. It's just been a super busy year for us and a lot of other priorities kind of commanding our time. But this story, this interview that we're sharing with you today is definitely something that is worth the investment of the time. And we appreciate you spending time with us today and hope that it is a really impactful interview and an impactful story for you to listen to. Before we get to our special guest, I want to bring on my partner in crime, our podcast producer, Raul Espinosa. Raul,
hey,
how are you
everybody
doing, my man?
Oh, I am doing great. Fired up, ready to go. Trying to make it through this episode. Let's see if we can do it without.
It just feels so comfortable being back in the studio recording another episode, especially with you at the helm. That makes a huge difference. It takes a lot off of my plate. Well, let's get into the business at hand. We want to bring on a guy who, if you are here because you follow Jamal, number one, want to welcome you to Thrivenomics. Hopefully this is a podcast that you'll want to subscribe to and listen into the other episodes that we've got and keep listening in the future. But if you are not familiar with Jamal Chubb and his story, it's really an amazing testimony and an amazing witness to something that is really impacting everybody around the world. So Jamal Chubb, welcome to Thrivenomics.
Thrivenomics.
Welcome.
Yeah, glad to have you on with us, and I cannot tell you how happy I am to be seeing your face and to see you smiling and to see you back with us on a regular basis. Welcome back to Thrive. I mean, you never really left, but obviously you definitely had some things that you needed to tend to.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for having me here on Thrivenomics. I want to make sure I say thank you. You guys do a phenomenal job with disseminating information and talking about the what's what and the who's who, and what's going on in the world and specifically also in the mortgage industry. And I'm humbled that I get to do this with you guys. So
awesome.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah. I think we're actually pretty humbled that you're going to be on today. So
yeah,
pretty excited.
Yep. I'm excited to hear the conversation that unfolds. Yeah. But those of you who are not familiar with Jamal, or maybe you follow him on social and you're like, I never knew what this guy did. Jamal is a member of our talent attraction and career development team and does a fantastic job helping us to recruit and spread the gospel of Thrive and what makes this place such a great place to work, and as well as helping our clients really receive an exceptional lending experience. So that's Jamal's day job. But the reason why we wanted to have him on is because of the story that he has to share about the last, Jamal, about the last 10 or 12 months of your life.
Yeah.
So it's been a pretty interesting time for you. Just to give people a little bit more perspective on you, you're a relatively young guy. You spent about 4 years in the Navy. You were deployed to Afghanistan, got out of the Navy, got into the working world round about when, 2011, 2012?
Out of the Navy, 2011.
Okay.
Did some college classes, jumped into the professional world after college, 2013.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So and transition into the mortgage industry as well in 14.
Gotcha. Well, you've done a fantastic job building a career, and specifically in what you do in the recruiting field within the mortgage industry. You already had, prior to everything that we're going to talk about, prior to that starting, you already had a pretty substantial following and a pretty high level of engagement on across all the different social media platforms, even before this hit. But once this situation came to your doorstep, boy, it really exploded because you made a choice to start sharing your story and sharing your experience of, I'll just go ahead and set it up. Your wife, Sierra, was pregnant with your third child.
Yep.
And that was, and the timing of it was was a little was a little inconvenient for you, simply from the standpoint of that was right about the time that the COVID vaccines were coming out. And actually, I better do this real quick, a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to be talking about COVID, and we are going to be talking about the impact that it has had specifically on Jamal and his family. This is not intended, want to give this disclaimer, this is not intended to constitute medical advice for anybody out there listening. We're not doctors. We're not medical professionals. We're not telling you whether you should or should not get vaccinated, or whether you should or should not get a mask. That is for you to decide. If you want expert medical advice, then definitely talk to your doctor or general physician about those issues, so that you can make an informed decision in that regard. But just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that before we lead into this conversation, that this is strictly just opinion and us having a conversation about what Jamal went through. So now, with that, all the legal stuff out of the way, let's go back to your story. So Sierra gets pregnant with your third child, and that was happened to be right about the time that vaccines were becoming a little bit more prevalent and were getting released. So what was the thought process that you guys went through as a family and as husband and wife? What was some of the thinking that y'all went through at that time, determining on what was the best course of action for y'all?
Yeah. Wow. So in the moment, let's go to March 2021. Okay. Vaccines were, yes, becoming more prevalent. People were talking about getting back to vaccinate or not to vaccinate, and was it safe, and so on and so forth. And for me, because as a military veteran, when you're in the military, there's not like a question of whether you can or cannot, should or should not vaccinate. Since day one of boot camp, you're going in, and even if you've had certain things, they're giving it all to you again to make sure that you do have that stuff, right? So it's not a question of if you can or if you should. It's you're going to do it because you're going to obey the orders of those appointed over you, right?
Sure.
So with that being said, for me, it was like, listen, this is a new thing. People, there's a lot of uncertainty around it. If anybody's going to do this for my family, it's going to be me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I had a trip coming up to come to Texas in a few months anyway. And I wanted to make sure that I was protecting myself and being able to be a person who could provide for my family unhindered. Because I noticed that COVID was, if people got COVID, they were down for 3-4 weeks, months sometimes. Right. So I was the first one to get vaccinated. And actually, I want to say I did that back in May. Mm-hmm. Was it May? I want to say it was May, the beginning of May. And however, for my wife, her being pregnant, there had not been any consistent data that was introduced that said this thing was safe for pregnant women.
Right.
And she and I had a quick conversation. Hey, what do you think? And she's like, I just don't want to risk something happening to our son. And I don't have a dog in that fight, right? Like, she's protecting our child, and I understand that she wants to do that.
Right.
But at least I could get vaccinated, and I did. I was fully vaccinated. So, and again, there was no CDC information out at the time saying, hey, this needs to happen because this is what we're seeing, or that COVID is super bad for pregnant people, pregnant women, or something that said that COVID, the vaccine was, overly safe. Like that just hadn't matured itself yet.
Right.
And so she made the best decision and did what she could to mask up and social distance and all the things. And actually at the time when she got sick, COVID was like on a decline. So it was like, okay, there's vaccines, it's on a decline, right? And she still wasn't the person that got sick because she went out of the house. So
it was brought in.
Yeah. So essentially what ended up happening was and on the week of July the 16th, we had our daughter in a sports camp.
Mm-hmm.
And Sierra wanted to send her to sports camp. And I was like, sure, it's an outdoor camp. Right. And at the time, the information as far as kids getting COVID, it was like a really rare, if ever, a thing that happened. It wasn't like, you got to remember COVID started out as, if people are geriatric or have pre-existing conditions, this is going to impact them really bad. Right. Then it was, this is impacting people that are younger with pre-existing conditions. Then it was, people who, and this is the progression. This is where we fell. It was if, kids can get COVID and how often and how rapid is increasing for that situation. And then it was pregnant women. If they get COVID, it's fatal. So, but so at the time we didn't even know like kids could, that it was such a huge deal if a kid contracted COVID and what that even looked like. So my kid goes to a sports camp. She contracts it, gives it to her younger brother. My wife is pulling them in bed and being with them, but we didn't even know it was COVID at the time.
Right.
Until my wife started showing symptoms that wouldn't go away, and the cough, and after probably about a week of her having symptoms, on the 22nd of July, I said, "Hey, you need to go get tested. You might have COVID." She said, "Really? You think this is COVID?" I said, "Yeah." And so from the time she came positive, which would have been the 19th of July through the 21st of July, I'm laying in bed with her every single night, every night. Right. And I'm helping her with her cough, and I'm rubbing her back and putting Vicks on her, and trying to take care of her. And I'm taking care of her kids too, every single night. Yeah. And I didn't have any sort of symptom or anything that happened to me whatsoever, which we look back now, and Sierra and I had this conversation the other day, and we were so thankful that I didn't, because we've seen so many times where there were two parents, and
it's basically sidelined.
Yeah.
At the same time.
At the same time in the hospital, and a few times leaving just kids orphaned.
Yeah.
Which was insane. So we are so thankful that was not us in that situation. Like, that's something to be super thankful for.
Wow.
So
was it about this time that you determined, this is not getting any better? Were there any treatments that you were trying to give her other than just over the counter stuff?
No, just over the counter stuff at the time. And at the time there was no monoclonal antibody treatment for her either.
Yeah.
Right. That didn't become prevalent till after she got sick and her story got, really out there.
Right.
So it was just one of those things where it was like, let's go to the doctor and see what they can do for us. And so on her birthday, July 24th, we dropped her off at our local hospital. And that day on the 24th, they diagnosed her with COVID pneumonia and said that she needed to be sent to a bigger hospital where they could deal with the pregnancy and the COVID.
Gotcha.
And then on the 25th, they noticed that our son Miles, was in distress. And
this is your unborn son, not your born son.
Yeah. Our unborn son Miles was in distress, and he could not, his breathing was struggling a little bit. So they went ahead and had a C-section for her at 38 weeks. And, then, that happened. And then I was at the hospital for a day and a half with her and Miles. And then I had left. And the very next day they called me and said, "Hey, Miles is ready to come home. You can come pick him up." I'm like, "Great. What about Sierra?" And they're like, "Unfortunately, her condition is not improving." Right. So,
now she was not in a coma at the time that she gave birth, correct?
She was not. No.
Okay.
No, she was
that
not.
comes later. All right. So what's going on? And obviously, as I mentioned before, that you were pretty engaged and very well connected on social media. It was about the time that she got admitted to the hospital. I think that was about the time when you made the decision to essentially start journaling and documenting what it was that you were going through and started telling your story. What was it that you felt was, why did you feel like that was a necessary step for you? Or what was the motivation for you to share that story?
Yeah. So initially it was because of how many text messages and phone calls I was getting that I couldn't keep up with. To be quite honest with you, right? I'm just trying to remedy the fact that there's so many people who are reaching out and texting and calling that I can't get back to because of the trauma that I'm dealing with, right?
Right.
So it was really simple for me to do a 3-minute TikTok video and to share it with people, right? Hey, this is what's going on, boom. Because I couldn't text. And even still, like even just the other day, I found a folder on Facebook that's marked as spam that I have probably a couple hundred messages in from people that I'm now going back through and being like, oh my goodness, this was so kind. Thank you for messaging me. I didn't see this. So it was all about being able to update people initially when it happened.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jamal, but I would be remiss, I would be derelict in my duties as director of marketing if I didn't point out to all the loan officers who are watching right now, there's your solution for all of those common questions that you get every single day that you get tired of answering all the time. Go record a video that answers the question and send it out to your network, just like Jamal just gave you the recipe for it. So, okay. So marketing and coaching session is over. Let's return to the story.
So yeah, that's initially how it started, and then as it it progressed in phases. So that started like that, but then as my wife's condition got worse, I needed hope from people, right? Prayers, definitely prayers. Also, faith stories of people who were as sick as her that got better, right? I needed those stories desperately, because the thing I learned about, hoping and believing that something good is going to happen is if you're around people that have already experienced it, right? You have something to hold on to. So I was just looking for that hope for myself. And then from there, it went from me asking people for hope to giving people hope. Right. And it just became a thing of its own, really.
Yeah. I just remember when you started sharing all those videos, and of course I've known you and had a working relationship with you and a friendship with you for a couple of years now since you've been with Thrive. And so as soon as I heard and as soon as I saw what you were starting to do, I was tuning in to every single one of those updates because I wanted to know, number one, I had a concern for you as a friend, but number two, I had a concern for Sierra as well, and especially for Miles and your beautiful children. If you haven't seen a photo, we'll probably put up a photo here real quick. But if you haven't seen a recent photo, it is. It's like a family of models. I mean, they just are like the Hallmark greeting card. Like portrait right there. It's just fantastic photos, and y'all did a great job of chronicling after her recovery. So I mean, spoiler alert, she got better and she's back home now. But after she returned home, y'all did still continued to do a great job of chronicling her progress, because there's still a ways for her to go in terms of getting back to 100% of what she was like before. Before all this happened. But just seeing the smile on your face and everything is so good. But back to when you started doing this, it was something where it just gained, it really just gained a life of its own that expanded beyond people whom you actually know, or people that you're connected to through this industry. I mean, you had people millions of people all over the world watching your videos and following your stories. So how did that set with you, at least either initially or over time? Was that anything remotely close to what you were expecting to see happen?
That is not something I expected to see happen. No. I was completely in shock. Now, I will say, like, specifically on TikTok, I was connected to some people who were really influential on social media already. And like, when I say connected, like, it's one thing to follow somebody, but it's another thing for you to be mutuals. I was mutuals with some people already that were really influential, phenomenal storytellers, great at building. And it was just cool that those relationships were there, but I didn't know how much they actually cared until this happened. Right. So it's like, you got friends who have 100,000 followers, 300,000 followers, 1 million followers, 500,000 followers. And all of a sudden this happens and they want to share it because they want to help you. And they did. And so every time it feels like overnight at one point, I want to say the jump was like 126,000 from my initial 5,000 followers on TikTok.
Wow.
Like overnight. And now that specific following, that for specific community is sitting somewhere like 340 something thousand followers, right?
Wow.
People. So, and I hate using the phrase followers. I really, really do, just because, man, I hate using that because, it feels more like I owe them, you know?
Yeah.
Like, typically the word follower, when that's said, that it's deduced that there's a leader, right? And I'm just a guy who's thankful that people decided to care, right? So they go for me, for people, they would be, oh, this is how many followers. And for me, is no, this is the community of people that just cared, right?
That's a really interesting perspective. A really interesting way to put it. I like that. I wish more platforms would adopt that kind of emphasis. So all right. So you get in. You're getting more, and you're building a larger and larger community of people who are engaged with your story. I'll phrase it that way, and they want to hear more. I know one of the things that really kind of made me shake my head, not out of disbelief, but just like, wow, was when the Guardian, the newspaper over in the UK, picked up the story and ran with it. Young guy, young family from South Carolina, and the Guardian, the UK, wants to run a story about you. Did they reach out to you directly, or did they just pick up the story and kind of run with it based on what they could research on their own?
James, are you ready for this?
Yes.
I didn't know that happened until you just told me.
You're kidding. I swear. That was one of the first things in the media that I saw. Like, I just was kind of looking at some stuff about you and this Guardian UK article, it had your photo in it and everything. And I was like, Dad, guys, you need an agent?
Clue that happened.
You're kidding me.
You just told me.
All right. Well, let's stick with something. Okay.
So they very well.
How does that make you feel, Jamal?
Yeah.
So listen, there are times where things happened, and here's the thing. I knew at a certain point that it was important for me to make sure that I shared the story. Okay. To news outlets that reached out, I knew it was very important for several reasons. It became very important.
Yeah.
But with that being said, if you told me, like you just did, that somebody in the UK ran a story, right? They could have very well reached out to me for permission, and I wouldn't even remember saying,
oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I can see that too.
Just because of how heavy things were, I was focused on making sure Sierra made it.
Right.
Now, here's the big deal about what we're talking about with media and people and the world, right? If there's one way that I can ensure that my spouse makes it through this, aside from having the best doctors and whoever else, right? It's making sure that people care about her.
Yeah.
Right. So I became fully aware at some point that that a hospital will tell you, and this in the hospital we were at were phenomenal. They're great people. They're amazing. Prisma Health, Columbia, South Carolina. They are phenomenal people. Now, hear what I'm going to say. There is a difference when people say you're going to get the best of something, and there's a difference when your boss is right there watching you deliver the best of something, right? Because then you know that you're going to deliver the best version of what it is that you do because your boss is watching you, right? And so for me, the media was the flashlight for the hospital who was saying, we're going to give your wife the best care, right? And I was saying, oh, I have no doubts about it. I have no doubts that you will, right? Because these are my friends, ABC, NBC, CNN, Fox News. Like, they came with me to make sure that that this goes.
Kind of some built-in accountability right there.
Yeah, they came with me to make sure that this goes the way this is supposed to go. Right, and that was only me, like the storytelling part. When I realized that was just me doing what I knew how to do, right? The only thing I know how to do in this world is build relationship, and
you do very well.
Thank you. Is build relationship and care about people, right? And on top of that, communicating what's important, right? That's my wheelhouse. And in this moment, there was a person that needed to be cared about, right? There was some communication that would help that, right? And there was lots of connection to be made. So when people say, do you regret talking to the media about what was going on with Sierra? It is a resounding no. I do not regret it for 1 second, because the hospital and the rehab facility, Encompass Health in Columbia, South Carolina, rehab facility, they were so gracious and so good to us because they cared so much about her story. Not a nurse or doctor, an aide, a janitorial staff member. Not a single person didn't know what was going on before they got into the room.
Sure.
And so much so that at one point, because she began to rehab in the hospital, they built a gym inside the hospital for my wife.
Oh my God.
They built a gym right down the hall in one of the empty rooms. They built a gym.
That's awesome.
Now, you tell me if they're building gyms in hospitals for COVID patients all over America, right?
Probably not.
So yes, absolutely, Sierra was going to get the best care, hands down.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
I remember, obviously, you and I chatted last week, Jamal, and or actually a couple of weeks ago, I think, where we were just catching up. And after your return back to working full time, and I remember sharing with you stories of standing in the kitchen, just tears streaming down my face with my wife, who's a cath lab nurse, standing right next to me. Her tears in her eyes, watching some of your video updates, especially when she started recovering. When you had a video about her getting out of a coma, and then laughing at one of my favorite videos that you did was the one where you did the mashup with the Notebook, and you were joking about her looking at the menu and not being able to decide, now that she can eat solid food, her not being able to decide what she wants. And you're standing there asking her, what do you want? That whole Ryan Gosling line. I laughed pretty hard at that one. That was hysterical. But so when things started turning a corner for Sierra, when she woke up from the coma, when they were able to take her off the respirator, when she was breathing room air instead of being on oxygen, like what was the feeling for you, like being able to flip on the camera and give those kinds of updates instead of she's not responsive, doesn't hear my voice. She can't grab my fingers. She has yet to meet her child.
I have to give you the full circle moment that happened with that, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't told this in a video form yet, so you're the first person to hear it.
Okay. A Thrivenomics exclusive.
So there was one specific doctor who I respect a great deal. Mm-hmm. Okay. He was pretty much over Sierra's case the entire time. They rotated through, but he always had his hand on it. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, Jamal, I've called every and I'm going to cry, but they're happy tears. Okay. So bear with me. Jamal.
We probably will too. Just warning you.
Jamal, as you know, we've had to put your wife on a ventilator, and that began to fail. And now we have to put her on the ECMO machine, and it looks like this is going to fail too.
Oh, wow. We've
done everything we can, and her heart has stopped twice, and we've had to bring her back to life. Your best option, and we feel as a staff that your best option is hospice. I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but we think this is the best route. And I had to hear that conversation play over and over again. Literally, he and I had to have that conversation every day for about 3 or 4 weeks. And then probably on the 4th week, when Sierra had woken up from the coma and was showing mental status that she was herself, he comes down the hall and I see him and he says, hey, Jamal. So hey, Dr. So-and-so, how are you? He says, I'm well. He said, people are telling me, because the prognosis was that she was going to be a vegetable.
Yeah.
That she had suffered a brain injury so great that I hadn't told people on social media that. I kept that very private, and I only told a few people what was going on because I know that they would believe with me.
Right.
That they would believe with me regardless of how bad the situation was. Yeah. And so he had come and said that she was going to be a vegetable and she wouldn't do anything. And so the days leading up to that were, one day we'd have a conversation, and what they're looking for when a person is coming out of a coma is something called purposeful movement.
Yep.
Okay. Meaning you say, squeeze my hand, and a person squeezes your hand. You say, can you tell me your name? And they say, my name is, right? Purposeful movement. And their prognosis was that she would be a vegetable and only be able to do what she was doing. And at the time, the only thing she was doing was sitting there with her eyes open, wide open. And so I'd have a conversation about hospice for several days, and then she went from sitting with her eyes open to blinking. Right. 3 days later, I'd have another conversation with the doctor. Hey, so that's still not enough. And she went from blinking to being able to scan the room a little bit with her neck. Another conversation. 3 or 4 days later, they do something called a pain response, and they would pinch her, and she would say, ouch. Jamal, that's still not purposeful movement. 3 days later, going from her to saying ouch to them saying, hey, can you wiggle your feet or squeeze my fingers? And her being able to squeeze fingers and wiggle her feet. Hey, Jamal, we still don't feel like that's purposeful movement. We still don't feel like her mental status is there. We still recommend hospice. One day I come into the room and she is watching Law and Order SVU sitting up in her bed. I say, hey, babe. And she says, hi.
Oh, wow.
Had she spoken directly to you before in any setting?
not consistently.
Right.
There was like touch. She was very touch and go, but not consistently. And she smiled at me and said, "Hi." And I came in the room. I said, "How are you?" And she's like, shaking her head. I said, "Has anybody told you what happened?" And she said, "No." She just shook her head. I said, "Well, let me be the first to tell you. You died. You died. And the doctors were able to bring you back. And right now, they're hoping that your lungs get well enough so you can breathe without these machines. This machine and this machine that's keeping you alive."
Yeah.
The doctor comes in who gave us the bad news and says to me, "I hear that your wife is exhibiting signs of communicating and so on and so forth." I say, "Yep." And he comes in. He says, "Can I talk to her?" I said, "Absolutely." I said, "Sierra, this is Dr. Schrift. Dr. Schrift, this is Sierra." And he goes, "Hi, Sierra. Do you remember me?" And she goes, "Yes." And they have a conversation about the last thing they talked about before she was put in the vent. And then the conversation's over. And when I say conversation, she's mouthing words.
Right.
And he says, "Jamal, it looks like you guys have turned a corner here." Right? "This is really amazing. And you should be thankful because this doesn't happen." So it goes from that to fast forward to about 6 weeks later. He's coming in to make his rounds, same doctor. And he comes into the room. Excuse me. And he comes into the room and looks at Sierra and looks at me. He says, "Sierra, you're not sick enough to be in the hospital. You're not sick enough to be in the hospital. You need to be moved to a rehab facility. We're working on your discharge for the following week." And so, James, I know that was a long answer to a short question, but you asked me, how did it feel to be able to start including her in videos and seeing her come to life and seeing this, all happen? I always believed that it would. But even in my belief and my prayers and my hope that it would, it still feels like a dream. Right?
Yeah.
It still feels.
Wow.
I don't think that I have any more questions other than, you could just stop right there, and you've got a story that is just such an amazing testimony. And the cool thing is that the story's not over, and because you've shown you've recorded a number, or you've posted a number of both videos as well as photos of her with her children, of the reunion with the children. You want to talk about a real tearjerker, just go check out those photos. The video of Sierra saying "I love you" to Miles, and him responding and just loving every second of it, and recognizing his mom's voice. That blew me away.
Yeah.
And just to be able to see the progress that she's made, and I'm sure it felt like an eternity while you were going through it. It felt like an eternity just from my perspective, and I wasn't even there. I was just following your story on social.
Yeah.
And just all the people praying for you, all the people praying for her, praying for your kids, and being able to now celebrate with you just this amazing story, this amazing journey, and that is not done. And she's still recovering. She's still making improvements. And I could not be more happy for you and for Sierra.
Yeah, same here. It was crazy to watch everything. Because we had just spoken, Jamal, at the summit over here in Dallas.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. My wife met you and all that. And you just left like a huge impression on us. I mean, we talked for a little bit, and you just come off as just like such an authentic, sincere person, and you just left a really good impression. And so when I told my wife about what was going on, I showed her some of the videos, and it was just very hard to watch because her dad actually passed from COVID.
Oh,
so yeah,
I'm sorry, Raul.
Oh no, it's okay. I mean, things happen for a reason, I guess. And but I mean, your story also, it happened a little before we met you. But your story also, I don't know if it was hope, but it just it was like a little bit of closure too for her, because I think when something like that happens, it's just a lot of like why does stuff like this happen to some people and not others. But I mean, just watching you guys go through that and such a great ending, like it really helped her out, Yeah. So
thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it really helped her out a lot.
One of the things that I've frequently thought, and you and I actually had this conversation last week, is kind of a what's next. I mean, you've already been on. Let's talk to the networks that you've been on. Now you're on Good Morning America.
Yeah,
that was cool.
You were you on? What were some of the other networks you were on? Was it CNN? Did you do the CNN interview, or was it another network?
So I ended up not doing the CNN interview.
Right.
I've done a lot of local news stuff.
Yeah.
And
several
then
local channels.
ABC is doing it hasn't released yet because they just finished interviewing us a couple of weeks ago.
Gotcha.
But ABC Nightline is doing a 17-minute dedicating the whole show to this. So that'll air next Tuesday, I think.
Nice.
So
right. Raul, we better scoop them and get the podcast out before next Tuesday. We're going to scoop Nightline. No, I'm just kidding. No offense, Nightline. But okay, so that's fantastic, and that was one of the reasons why I just felt an urgent need to want to have this interview with you, because as I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, we've kind of been on a hiatus a little bit in 2021 for a number of reasons, namely just time and prioritizing all the projects that we as a marketing team have here at Thrive. But this story was just too important, especially at this time of year. This story was too important not to share, and not to share both to our networks, as well as allowing Jamal to share it if he so chooses with his network, and just allowing more people just to hear the hope and the love and the joy that Raul, or that Jamal just has innately in him. Because I guarantee you this, anybody who has known Jamal prior to this event and has the opportunity to talk to him now will see that there is no change in the type of man that he is and the character that he holds. He is the same person now. I mean, obviously changed, having gone through such a dramatic event. But as far as what's in here, the guy that you saw in all those TikTok videos, the guy that you saw in those Facebook posts and the LinkedIn posts and Twitter posts, and the guy that you see in those interviews loving on his wife, that's the same Jamal that existed before any of this, any of these trials came upon he and his family's lives. So that in and of itself is hugely commendable, in my opinion, Jamal. And I applaud you. It just means that your mama raised you right. And I have a healthy appreciation for that, because I had a mama that did the same for me. So
I'm going to tell Sierra that you said that, and she's going to appreciate that statement so very much.
We're good.
Your mama raised you right. I love that. Thank you.
Glad I can help out with some marital counseling for you. But I can't overstate that enough, that you are the same guy that I knew before any of this took place, before any of this hit you and your family. And that's why it made me so happy when you and I had that video chat a little bit ago, or a week or two ago, and I got to see your face, and it was a one-on-one conversation with you and me. I was like, did a big old fist bump. I was like, Jamal's back. There he is.
Yeah.
And it just made me very, 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 very happy to that this is how things turned out, because I know that it could have easily gone the other direction.
Yeah.
But it wasn't our time.
Yeah. No. And man, thank you so much for you guys just being the kind of people, like this whole entire Thrive culture, right? Being the kind of place where tragedy happens and you guys pour out love.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that if I was in any other company in corporate America, I would not have had the same opportunities that I was given here during the time that I was given that we were going through that. You cannot convince me otherwise. Right. So, our leadership here, and I have to say this, Roy called and prayed with me.
Wow.
Right. He picked up the phone and prayed with me and asked me what was going on, and said if there was anything if there's anything he could do, let him know.
That sounds like Roy.
Yeah, it does.
Barbara on social media, when I say I couldn't make a post without seeing her, I'm with you. I love you.
Jeez.
I'm praying for you. Like you would have thought Barbara was my mama, right?
Like she was the one who raised you, right?
Oh my gosh, she was with me, like just there.
Awesome.
Randall Gillespie flying out before
diligent.
my wife even got out of the hospital to have breakfast and say, "Are you ready to come back to work? Don't rush it. Take your time." Right. What do we need to? Tay Tolliver, my manager, to everybody on our TAC team, guys, I can't even stress enough to our regional managers, right, branch managers, people who were generous and donated to our GoFundMe, that somebody in the mortgage industry that I used to work with started that. I wouldn't have expect that to be the outcome, But this Thrive community, man, has been just the spiritual muscle and the support that I needed to get through this unscathed.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I know from this guy's perspective, and just speaking for me, I mean, I absolutely echo what you had to say about this community and how we look to support each other. Not obviously, Thrivenomics is the title sponsor, or excuse me, Thrive Mortgage is the title sponsor of this podcast. So we're not trying necessarily to turn it into a Thrive commercial, but But that's kind of what we're about. We're about people finding their tribe. And I've said this before on this and other podcasts, Thrive is not for everybody, but we are definitely in the people business, and we're definitely interested in supporting people folks who are members of our tribe and members of our community. Right. So we would hope that this kind of changes the messages like this it's our hope that this kind of changes the perception of what a mortgage company is all about,
and also
recent headlines.
Yeah, and also a little bit behind the name as well. It wasn't just people are going to thrive when they get in their new homes, but it's also like our employees are going to thrive as well. Like, this is just a great company. These are some of the things that we talked about when we were doing the name changes. Like, let's name it Thrive because and let's show what we're doing for our employees and our coworkers and our friends here, because not only is it just people thriving for new homes, but it's also employees. I mean, we thrive at this company, and we have to live that, and we have to show it. So this is just a perfect example of that.
Yeah. Well, Jamal, what would you say is, obviously we've still got Sierra still has some recovery to do. She's still got some therapy to go through to regain 100% strength and use of all of her body. What's next for you as far as your audience and as far as the community that you've built on social media? Is it something where you feel a new passion for delivering a message of hope, or what do you think is the next step?
No, I've always felt a passion for that. I think the next step for specifically for our family is, I feel like there's an obligation to give people hope.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just an opportunity; it's an obligation. Like, like and not even just in dealing with COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to family, being a family, and dealing with tragedy, and even in the corporate world, having something to say, right? People's family lives, we come to work and we do what we do, right? But if you've ever noticed that even when an employee's family life is off, their work life suffers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And vice versa, right?
Yeah.
So we just feel called to make an impact of helping people realize what the main thing is, and that's how important your time is, and where you spend it, and who you spend it with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll be echoing that sentiment on our social media platforms in a big way coming in 2022. So
Very cool.
Awesome.
Can't wait to see it. And I can't wait to see you at Summit next February.
Yes.
And definitely we're all definitely very overdue in being able to slap each other on the back and give each other hugs and have some face-to-face conversation time. So looking forward to that event.
Yes, I am as
yeah.
well. I am as
Awesome.
well.
Awesome stuff. Well, Jamal, I'm going to give you the last word and before we sign off, and tell us where folks, if they're not already, I don't know how anybody would have been able to miss you, but how can they find you on social media platforms, whether it's TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever they happen to go? Where can they find you?
Facebook, LinkedIn, just Jamal Chubb. You can just search my name and I'll come up.
Two B's.
Yeah, CHUBB. And then on TikTok or Instagram, you can search Chubb House. Instagram, it's chubb.house, but I've changed it to Chubb House. And you can catch all the cool family updates on there and good stuff that's going on. So
Cool.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, Jamal, as always, great to see your face and see your smile especially, and very happy that you took time out of your day to join us here on Thrivenomics, and really enjoyed catching up with you and hearing a lot of your story, whether it was recounting stuff that we did see or hearing stuff that we didn't. Really appreciate how much of an open book you are and how you just love pouring yourself into other people.
thank you guys so much. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here, guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You got it. Well, folks, we're going to sign off for now. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Thrivenomics. We will definitely be back with a force or like a force, or with a vengeance. No, not vengeance. We'll be back in 2020 with a whole bunch of great interviews and great topics to be covered. If you would like to subscribe, we would definitely welcome that. Just hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you choose to listen to podcasts, and we'll be back with season 3. And ready and raring to go in the early spring, February, March timeframe is about when we'll be dropping the new episodes of Thrivenomics for you guys and your enjoyment. So hope you enjoyed this interview with Jamal. I know I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, Raul, for manning the production board. And we will see you next time on Thrivenomics. Hope you have a wonderful and safe holiday season this year. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we will see you again in 2022. Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. The title sponsor for Thrivenomics is Thrive Mortgage. Licensed in multiple states across the U.S., Thrive Mortgage employs the best professionals, equipped with leading technology and the most efficient process to deliver a legendary lending experience. For more information about how we can serve you, or to find a local Thrive Mortgage professional in your area, please visit us at thrivemortgage.com. You can also contact us directly via email at thrivenomics@thrivemortgage.com. Thrive Mortgage is an equal housing lender, NMLS ID 268552.